everyone to today's webinar, Monitoring Medical Device Trials in Introduction. Here on the slide is just a little bit about me. I am a full-time trainer with Barnett International. I have also worked as a clinical research associate, or CRA, for both pharmaceutical, medical device, and then sponsor companies. I am certified through ACRP as a CCRA as well as a project manager through PMI. And really the most important thing about what I enjoy doing is training individuals like yourself on good clinical practice, how to also ensure that you are successful in your role as a clinical research professional. So just looking at the learning objectives for today, I won't go over this in great detail other than we're going to look at really why is it that we monitor. So what do the regulations state? Also looking at the required documentation, looking at roles and responsibilities that the CRA has when it comes to the various monitoring visits. So as I was mentioning, we will also look at the meaning of what both protocol and regulatory or GCP compliance is, and so why this is important as the CRA is monitoring the clinical trial, and then also looking at the rationale behind having adequate documentation of the monitoring visit, along with including in documentation any issues that were identified, and then the implementation to resolve or correct these issues. And sometimes this requires the use of a root cause analysis and then implementation of a corrective and preventative action to resolve the issues. So how both the site and then the sponsor are working collaboratively to ensure that this occurs. So let's first just look at what the requirements are when it comes to monitoring. When we look at the regulations require that sponsors do monitor medical device trials. And the reason why we do this is for the protection of our subjects that are enrolled. We have to ensure that when patients are enrolled in the clinical trial that they are protected. And we do this in several ways, and I'll talk about this in a moment, but they are the paramount reason why we are going out to monitor. Second, we are wanting to ensure data integrity. So if you think about our protocol, which is our guidebook or blue book of what needs to be done for the clinical trial, we want to ensure that this is being adhered to by the investigator and the staff. And so this data integrity is critical for the outcome to be analyzed in our trial. And then we also need to ensure when we go out to monitor that the investigator and the site are compliant with not only the protocol but compliance with federal regulations, also any agreements that are documented in the protocol or the clinical investigational plan, and then also adhering to requirements for reporting to the IRB as well. So specifically here on this slide, we see the documentation from the regulations. So 21 CFR 812.46 says that monitoring of investigations, that the monitor or sponsor needs to secure compliance. And if the sponsor discovers that an investigator is not complying with the signed agreement in the investigational plan, that the sponsor needs to ensure that they discontinue shipment of the investigational device, and the investigator is then terminated in their participation in the clinical trial. Now, let's think about this. Do we want to see this occur? No. So it is important then that we define up front what those expectations are when we are working with our investigator, and we can look at how we begin our relationship through a site qualification visit, and also ensuring that we have timely monitoring visits to identify any issues. And really the most important thing is by bringing about compliance to the protocol and to regulations is ensuring subject protection. And it is important then through the monitoring that we also identify any unanticipated adverse device effects. And so when CRAs go out to monitor, they are also going to look for any adverse events that were not reported and any unanticipated adverse device effects, making sure that those are going to be identified if they weren't previously by the investigator, and that they are also reported. And so this is important as well. And if we determine that this is not occurring, we also want to work with the investigator, but we also want to ensure that we report this not only to the sponsor, but then the sponsor has obligations to report this to the FDA, as well as making sure that we then communicate back to all investigators and they make their IRB aware. Now, the other thing is if we are going to identify any risk to the subject, this is where the risk when it comes to the unanticipated adverse device effects, that these are also going to be reported, like I said, to the FDA and other investigational sites.